So if you want to absolutely guarantee that a major life problem just, goes completely unsolved, the worst possible thing you can do is ask your best friend for advice.
Yeah. Which I know it sounds completely backwards.
It really does. I mean,
Mm.
we're kind of conditioned to believe that when we are weighed down by some massive decision like uh, a career pivot or a failing relationship or, moving across the country.
Right, those big life stressors.
Exactly. We think our very first step should just be to sit down with someone who loves us,
Hmm.
pour our hearts out, and basically ask for their guidance.
Yeah, it's the default human response.
But if you, our listener, have ever actually done this, you might have noticed this really strange phenomenon. Like you go in hoping for a lifeline.
Or at least a little bit of clarity.
Right, a burst of clarity or just feeling a sense of relief. But instead you walk away feeling somehow heavier.
Much heavier.
You
And
know?
usually a lot more confused.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More entrenched in your own anxiety, really. And honestly, just a little more exhausted than before you even opened your mouth.
It is a universally frustrating experience. And it happens precisely because we fundamentally misunderstand what a support network is actually designed to do, both biologically and psychologically.
Right.
We go in there expecting this objective strategic clarity, but we walk out carrying not only our own psychological baggage, but also, the projected unexamined fears of the person sitting across from us.
Wow. Okay, so today, that is exactly the phenomenon we are tackling in this deep dive.
Is a big one.
It is. We are going on a mission to unpack exactly why consulting others often fails to, actually solve our problems.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, we're going to look at how a specific psychological tool, this framework known as the miracle question, can help you bypass all that external noise.
And your own internal noise, too.
Right. Bypass your own neurological defense mechanisms and extract the real, actionable answers that are already hidden inside yourself.
Yeah. And just to set the stage for you as we dive into this isn't about ignoring advice, right?
Yeah.
And it certainly isn't a call to just isolate yourself from the people you love. We aren't saying that at all.
Nobody's saying become a hermit.
Exactly. What we are doing today is really looking under the hood at the mechanics of our own minds. We're going to explore how we unconsciously sabotage our decision-making processes.
Which we all do.
Constantly. And why our brains actually prefer the comfort of a known problem over the risk of an unknown solution.
Oof. That's a hard truth.
It is, but we have to thoroughly dismantle the why before we can effectively rebuild the how and look at completely reframing our approach to problem solving.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because our first major topic really dismantles a huge assumption.
It does.
Like we just mentioned, we are taught from a very young age that a problem shared is a problem halved.
Right, the old proverb.
Yeah. But reality suggests this is often a trap. So why is asking our closest confidants for advice so often detrimental to our progress?
Well, it starts by examining the psychological reality and, honestly, the evolutionary biology of the people we actually choose to consult. When you go to your close friends and family, you are going to people who, by definition, share a massive amount of your environment, your background, your values.
Basically, people exactly like you.
Right, you belong to the same tribe. And because of that proximity, they frequently project their own anxieties, their own limitations, and their own insecurities right onto your problem.
Wow.
They literally cannot view your situation objectively because your situation is intrinsically tied to their reality.
So wait, they aren't looking at my problem as like a math equation to be solved.
Not at all.
They're looking at my problem as if they had to solve it themselves, with all their own personal baggage attached to it.
Precisely. And there is a deeper layer here, too. It's called social homeostasis.
Social homeostasis. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, human groups, families, friend circles, they naturally seek equilibrium.
Right.
They want things to stay stable.
That makes sense.
So if you suddenly decide to, say, quit your stable corporate job to open a bakery or move across the world, you are threatening the equilibrium of the group.
Oh, I see. I'm rocking the boat.
Exactly. You are changing the dynamic. So the advice generated from this dynamic usually skews highly, almost irrationally, risk-averse.
Ah.
The phrases you will hear most often are things like, well, maybe you better not, or don't push yourself too hard, or my personal favorite, let's just wait and see how things pan out.
Right. Just give it 6 months.
Yes.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. But I do want to be clear here. they aren't doing this maliciously, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Like, my best friend isn't trying to sabotage me because she secretly wants me to be miserable.
Not at all. It is so crucial to understand that they care about you deeply, but it's exactly that closeness to you that makes them hyperfixate on the risks involved in whatever you're facing.
Because they don't want to see me get hurt.
Right. From an evolutionary standpoint, the safest place for a tribe member is right in the center of the camp.
Not wandering off into the unknown jungle.
Exactly. They want to protect you. But that protection often looks like telling you to stay exactly where you are, even if where you are is completely miserable.
Because misery is a known variable.
Yes. Misery is safe because it's predictable. The unknown is what terrifies them.
So it's almost like, okay, think of it this way. If I'm terrified of swimming,
Okay.
and I am standing at the edge of the pool, trying to decide if I should jump in, and I ask another person who's also terrified of swimming if I should do it.
They're obviously going to say no.
Right. They're looking at the water through their own lens of fear.
Exactly.
But let's take this a step further. If I know my friend is conscious, and I know they are going to tell me to play it safe, why do I go to them in the first place?
That is the million-dollar question.
Like, are we secretly setting ourselves up for this? Do we unconsciously pick the person who we know is going to tell us to stay out of the water?
It really raises an important point, and it gets to one of the most fascinating mechanisms of human psychology found in our source material today.
Okay, lay it on me.
Often, we actually already know the answer to our problem before we even formulate the question out loud.
Come on. I have a really hard time believing that.
It's true.
But if I'm agonizing over a decision for 6 months, tossing and turning, losing sleep over it, you're saying I already know the answer.
Deep down, your brain has usually already run all the simulations. You know exactly what step you need to take.
Then why am I losing sleep?
Because the friction, the sleepless nights, it isn't about a lack of data. It's about a lack of courage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We seek advice to use it as insurance.
Insurance. Walk me through that. What does that mean?
Well, think about it as an unconscious defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Let's say you make a massive, life-altering choice entirely on your own.
Okay. Like breaking up a long-term relationship.
Perfect example. You do it entirely on your own and it goes wrong. Or it's incredibly painful. The failure is entirely yours.
Right. It's all on me.
And your ego takes a direct, unmitigated hit. But if you consult 3 of your closest friends first.
I see where this is going.
Right. And they all validate your grievances or they all urge caution, and you let that caution sway you into staying, you now have a scapegoat.
Oh, man.
If things go wrong or if nothing changes and you remain deeply unhappy, you can just say, well, they agreed with me.
Or they thought it was a bad idea to leave, so I didn't. It's kind of their fault, too.
Exactly. We are desperately trying to disperse the responsibility of failure across a social network.
That is wild. We are outsourcing the blame before we even make a move.
We really are.
We're essentially saying, I want to do this, but I need you to co-sign the risk so I don't feel as bad if I fall on my face.
That's a perfect analogy.
It's like getting someone to co-sign a loan for a terrible business idea. You know it's a huge risk, but if the bank comes and takes the house, at least you aren't the only one suffering.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, and the consequence of this mechanism is actually quite severe.
I can imagine.
Every single time we do this, we subtly chip away at our own self-confidence.
Because we aren't trusting ourselves.
Right. By constantly seeking this insurance, we lose the sensation of standing on our own 2 feet. We basically train our brains to believe that we are incapable of independent navigation.
That's so damaging.
It is. We become dependent on external validation, not for clarity, but for safety. It forces you to ask yourself a very uncomfortable question.
Which is?
When you go to someone with a problem, are you genuinely looking for answers, or are you just searching for a cosigner on your hesitation?
Wow. Are you looking for answers or a cosigner on your hesitation? That is going to stick with me.
It's a tough mirror to look into.
It really is. But okay, if the path forward is actually already mapped out inside us, if I already know what I need to do, why are we so completely paralyzed by the execution?
That's the next layer of the puzzle.
Because if I know I need to quit the job, and I know asking my friends is just an excuse to delay, why can't I just pull the trigger? This brings us to the internal psychological barrier, right?
Yeah.
The thing that keeps us frozen in place.
Yes. And to understand the root of this inaction, we really have to look at a concept known as learned helplessness.
Okay, learned helplessness. I feel like I've heard that phrase tossed around in pop psychology or on social media. But what is the actual clinical definition here?
Well, learned helplessness was originally identified by the psychologist Martin Seligman back in the late 1960s.
Okay.
He conducted these experiments, which, honestly, by today's ethical standards, are quite controversial.
Fair warning to the listeners, I suppose.
Yeah. It involved dogs. He placed these dogs in a chamber where they received mild electrical shocks.
Oh, poor thing.
It's tough to hear. But one group of dogs had a lever they could press to stop the shock. So they had a mechanism to end the discomfort.
Right. They had a way out.
But another group had absolutely no control. No matter what they did, the shock continued until the researchers decided to turn it off.
Okay, so one group had agency, the other had none.
Exactly. But the real breakthrough happened in the second phase of the experiment.
What did they do?
All the dogs from both groups were put into a brand new box, and this box was divided in half by a very low barrier.
Okay.
The floor on one side would administer a shock, but all the dog had to do to escape it was just effortlessly jump over this tiny barrier to the safe side.
That seems simple enough.
It was. And the dogs who previously had control, the ones with the lever, they quickly figured it out and jumped the barrier.
Let me guess. The dogs from the group with no control didn't even try to jump.
They didn't even try.
Oh, wow.
They just lay down and endured the shock, even though escape was now entirely possible and, frankly, quite easy.
That is heartbreaking.
It is. But they had learned that their actions had no effect on their environment. They had completely internalized helplessness.
So they gave up before they even assessed the new situation.
Exactly. And when you, as a human, are at rock bottom, or when you have been struggling with a problem for a very long time, you experience the exact same neurological dampening.
You just stop trying.
You start to feel like no matter what you do, you cannot escape. You perceive an illusion of a dead end.
But wait, when you use the word illusion, that kind of implies the dead end isn't real.
Right.
But when I'm in the middle of, say, a massive financial crisis, or I'm stuck in a career that is slowly destroying my mental health, it doesn't feel like an illusion.
I know it doesn't.
It feels like gravity. Feels like a concrete wall.
It feels like gravity, yes. But the feeling of I can't do it or nothing will work is not a factual truth of the universe.
It's not.
No, it is a neurological adaptation. It is an illusion born from a buildup of past negative experiences, micro-failures, and importantly, internalizing other people's cautious or negative words.
Oh, like the advice from segment 1.
Exactly. Over time, feeling stuck simply becomes an efficient habit of thought for the brain.
Habit of thought.
Yes. What's fascinating here is that when we stop actively thinking about future possibilities, the brain doesn't just go quiet.
What does it do?
The brain is a prediction engine. It's always running. If you stop giving it positive variables to compute, it defaults to a baseline of hopelessness.
Seriously. It just assumes the worst by default.
Pretty much. It quietly and continuously sends a very specific message to your nervous system. There is no good future for you.
I need to push back on this quite strongly, actually.
Please do.
Because it sounds a little bit like we are saying all limitations are just in our heads. Like, just think positive.
I see where you're going.
Right. But sometimes it really feels like we just do not have the skills or the resources or the socioeconomic ability to move forward.
Yeah.
Like, if I am 45 years old, I have zero medical background, and I suddenly decide I want to be a neurosurgeon.
Okay, extreme example, but go on.
That isn't learned helplessness keeping me back, right?
Yeah.
That is a physical, factual limitation. My lack of a medical degree isn't a habit of thought. So where is the line between a genuine lack of ability and this illusion of a dead end?
That is an excellent distinction to make, and it is absolutely vital we don't slip into some sort of toxic positivity where we pretend all structural barriers are imaginary.
Right, because bills are real, degrees are real.
Exactly. Your example of the neurosurgeon is a constraint of physics and time. However, the foundational obstacle in the vast majority of our daily agonizing problems is almost never a literal lack of ability to take the next immediate step.
Okay, elaborate on that. The next immediate step.
Let's stick with your neurosurgeon example. You are 45, you want to be a neurosurgeon, you have no degree.
Right.
The immediate obstacle isn't that you can't perform brain surgery today. Nobody expects you to.
Thankfully.
The immediate obstacle is that you have to enroll in a basic biology class at a community college and sit next to 19-year-olds.
Oh, I see.
The true obstacle there is not a lack of ability to register for a class online. The true obstacle is avoidance behavior driven by the fear of failure, the fear of lost time, and heavily the fear of being laughed at or judged by your peers for starting over.
Oh, wow. So when I say I don't have the skills, what I'm actually doing is using a logistical reality to mask a psychological fear.
Precisely. When we claim a lack of ability, it is very often a rationalization.
It's an excuse.
It's a highly sophisticated smokescreen generated by the ego to avoid the vulnerability of trying and failing.
Because it's easier to say I can't than I'm scared.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is socially and internally far more acceptable to say I simply don't have the resources than to admit I am utterly terrified to try this because if I give it my all and fail, I will be devastated.
So the lack of resources might be real, but our absolute paralysis in the face of that lack is the learned helplessness.
You got it.
I mean, I could take out a loan, I could take night classes, I could start smaller. There are actions I can take, but I choose to focus on the impossible end goal to justify my inaction today.
Exactly. And this ties perfectly back to what we discussed in the first segment regarding group dynamics.
Right, our cautious friends.
Yes. When we consult our friends and we get that highly cautious, risk-averse advice, it is often because they are also suffering from their own avoidance behavior.
Oh, of course they are.
They are also looking at their own lives, seeing massive structural walls, and choosing not to look for the small doors.
So what happens?
You end up in this echo chamber. You have a dynamic where everyone is essentially recommending doing nothing to each other.
We're all just validating each other's rationalizations.
It's a collective reinforcement of learned helplessness.
We're all just sitting around a table validating each other's fears so nobody has to take a risk. It's like mutual assured stagnation.
That's a great phrase for it. And as long as you remain unaware of that structure, the problem just continues to run in circles.
Because nobody is actually trying to solve it.
Right. You will forever mistake your fear of the first step for an inability to reach the final destination. The cycle of inaction sustains itself indefinitely, all because the brain prefers the predictable misery of the known over the terrifying unpredictability of the unknown.
Okay, so let's summarize the trap we are in here, because it's a big one.
It's quite the maze.
External advice is compromised by social homeostasis and shared fear. Then, our internal monologue is hijacked by learned helplessness and the brain's prediction engine defaulting to a dead end.
Spot on.
We are essentially locked in a room where the walls are made entirely of our own rationalization. So how do we break out?
We obviously need a radical shift in perspective.
Right. We need a mechanism to bypass both the external noise of our tribe and the internal habit of despair.
Exactly. We have to change the fundamental angle from which we are viewing the problem, essentially bypassing the fear centers of the brain entirely.
And this is where we introduce the core tool of this deep dive.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, it's a specific technique used in professional, solution-focused brief therapy, and it's called the miracle question.
A very powerful tool.
And the way it works is almost deceptively simple, but I know there are deep mechanics behind it. So the premise is this, for everyone listening. You are instructed to imagine a specific scenario.
Go ahead and lay it out.
You go to sleep tonight, and over the course of the night, while you are completely unaware, a miracle occurs.
A literal miracle.
Right. The massive problem you have been agonizing over is 100% solved. It's completely gone. You wake up the next morning. What is the very first thing you do?
Now, I know it sounds almost childish at first glance, right?
A little bit, yeah. Like
About-
magical thinking or wish fulfillment.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
it is actually a highly sophisticated psychological tool designed to literally hack your neurobiology.
How so?
Well, when you are agonizing over a problem, your brain is operating in a threat state. Your amygdala is highly active, triggering fight, flight, or freeze.
And in the case of learned helplessness, it's almost always freeze, right?
Right.
So my brain literally thinks the career problem or the debt is a physical predator, like a tiger in the room.
Yes. The brain's threat detection system evolved for physical survival, but it applies the exact same hardware to modern social and abstract problems.
That seems like a design flaw.
Well, evolution hasn't caught up to credit card debt yet. But when the amygdala is firing like that, it severely limits the function of your prefrontal cortex.
Which is the logical part.
Right. The area of the brain responsible for executive function, planning, and creative problem solving. It just shuts it down.
Because you don't need to be creative when you're running from a tiger.
Exactly. But by asking the miracle question, you are essentially tricking the amygdala into powering down.
Oh.
You are saying, hey, there is no threat here. The problem is already gone. This clears the way for the prefrontal cortex to light back up and start generating actual useful data.
That is fascinating. We are bypassing the security system entirely.
We are.
But there is a very strict rule for how you answer this question, from what I understand.
No,
Like, you can't just say, I wake up and I feel so relieved and happy that the problem is gone.
no. That is the most critical rule of the whole exercise. You must focus on action, not emotion.
Okay, action, not emotion. Why is that?
Because feeling relieved is a passive state. The prompt requires you to be active. Why? Because from a neurobiological standpoint, emotion is very often a trailing indicator of action, not the other way around.
Wait, really?
Yes.
We usually think we need to feel motivated in order to act. Like,
Yeah.
I need to feel inspired before we go to the gym.
It is a massive, common misconception. Action actually triggers dopamine release, which then generates the feeling of motivation to continue acting.
Oh, wow. So you have it backwards.
Most people do. So when you answer the miracle question, you must ask yourself, what is the very first specific action the future problem-solved version of me is taking?
Okay, so it has to be a physical thing I do.
Exactly. If the problem is gone, how are you physically moving through your morning? What are you doing differently?
Like, am I making a phone call I've been avoiding?
Yes.
Uh,
Are you organizing your physical workspace? Are you speaking differently to your partner at the breakfast table?
I see.
You have to visualize the micro behaviors of the person who no longer carries the weight of the problem.
I love how practical that is. It's exactly like reverse engineering a recipe.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Well, think about it. When you are stuck in the problem, it's like staring at a massive pile of raw ingredients on the counter flour. Sugar, eggs, butter, yeast, and just feeling completely overwhelmed by the mess.
Right, you just see chaos.
Yeah. If you don't know how to bake, looking at a bag of flour doesn't help you. It just gives you anxiety.
Definitely.
But the miracle question is like sitting down, tasting the finished perfectly baked cake, and then working backward to figure out, okay, I can taste cinnamon, I can see the crumb structure. What did I need to do to get here? What was the absolute first step?
That is a perfect analogy. You are shifting from a state of overwhelm regarding the raw materials to a state of forensic reconstruction of the final product.
Forensic reconstruction, I like that.
And to do this properly, to really taste that cake, you must follow a specific methodology.
Okay, what's the method?
It's called the 10-second rule.
The 10-second rule.
When you ask yourself what that first specific action is, you do not rush to answer. You don't just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind to get the exercise over with.
Which is tempting.
Very tempting. But you have to ask the question, and you sit with it for a full 10 seconds in complete silence.
10 seconds can feel like an absolute eternity when you're waiting for an answer in your own head.
Yeah.
Why 10 seconds?
Because the first 2 or 3 seconds of your internal monologue will almost always be your anxious, rationalizing brain trying to jump back in.
Of the ego defending itself.
Exactly. It will say things like, well, I don't know, this is stupid, or I would just go back to sleep.
Right, I'd take a nap.
That is the echo of learned helplessness. But if you hold the silence, you engage what neuroscientists call the default mode network.
The default mode network.
This is the network in the brain that activates when we are daydreaming, envisioning the future, and connecting disparate memories. It requires a moment of quiet to surface the answer from your unconscious.
So you're basically letting the silt settle at the bottom of the lake so you can actually see the water.
Beautifully put, yes. And if the answer isn't perfect or totally clear on the first try, that is completely fine.
It takes practice.
It requires repetition. The contours of the answer become clearer the more you sit with that hypothetical, miracle-solved future. It is a process of gently drawing the truth out of yourself, basically bypassing the ego's immediate need to defend its own paralysis.
Okay, so understanding the neurological bypass of the miracle question is one thing. But applying it effectively in the real world seems like it requires some serious guardrails.
It definitely does.
Because if I sit down and try to imagine a miracle that solves my terrible boss, my creeping credit card debt, my back pain, and my strained marriage all at once, my brain is just going to short circuit.
Oh, absolutely.
We need specific parameters so we don't just overwhelm the prefrontal cortex all over again.
That is exactly right. If you try to use the miracle question to fix your entire life at once, it will collapse under its own weight.
Too much data.
The cognitive load is simply too high. Human working memory can only hold a handful of variables at any given time. This is often referred to as Miller's Law.
Right, the magical number 7 plus or minus 2.
Exactly. If you overload it, the brain defaults back to the amygdala, back to panic. You must narrow it down to one single worry.
Just one.
Just one.
But what if I have 5 major intertwined problems? Picking just one feels like I'm ignoring the grease fire on the stove to go put out the smoldering rug in the living room. It feels irresponsible to ignore the rest.
This raises a really important question about how we construct our own roadblocks.
What do you mean?
Well, that hesitation you're describing, the feeling that you can't possibly choose just one because they are all so important, is actually a highly recognizable psychological pattern.
Really?
Yes. If you find it hard to pick just one problem, that inability to choose might itself be your mind's defense mechanism trying to avoid finding a solution.
Wait, so even my indecision is a defense mechanism. My brain is weaponizing my own sense of responsibility against me.
Yes. The brain scatters focus as a way to protect you from taking action.
Oh my gosh.
Think about it. If you are focused on 5 distinct massive emergencies, no one can reasonably expect you to solve any of them, right?
Right, I'm too overwhelmed. I'm paralyzed.
You are effectively off the hook. It's a brilliant, if utterly destructive way to maintain the status quo. You get to feel busy and stressed, which feels like doing something without actually having to take the terrifying step of fixing anything.
Okay, that is a jagged pill to swallow.
I know.
I am manufacturing overwhelm to excuse my inaction. So how do we fix that? How do I force myself to pick the one problem when my brain is actively trying to confuse me with a smoke bomb of other issues?
You must bypass the analytical brain entirely for this step.
How?
Use your intuition. Do not sit down with a spreadsheet and try to objectively rank your problems by severity or long-term ROI.
So no pros and cons lists.
Throw the pros and cons list away. Pick the thing that is bothering you the absolute most right in this current visceral moment.
But isn't intuition inherently flawed? I mean, my intuition sometimes tells me to eat a sleeve of cookies instead of the salad.
Well, sure.
If we are talking about major life problems, shouldn't we rely on logic?
We often misunderstand what intuition actually is. We treat it like a mystical gut feeling or some random impulse.
Right.
But neurologically speaking, intuition is driven by the basal ganglia. It is a hyperfast pattern recognition system.
Okay.
Even a purely intuitive choice is actually a massive complex synthesis of all your past experiences, your emotional state, your intellect, and millions of data points stored in your unconscious mind that your conscious brain simply cannot process fast enough.
So it's basically a supercomputer.
Exactly. Your intuition is highly informed. It knows which thread, if pulled, will unravel the rest of the knot. Trust it to pick the target.
So you trust your basal ganglia, you pick the one target, you apply the miracle question, you look at the actions of your future self.
Yes.
What is fundamentally happening to our worldview when we execute this whole sequence?
What you are executing is a technique called reframing.
Reframing.
You are changing the psychological distance between you and the problem. Usually when we have a problem, we are looking out from the absolute bottom of a dark, narrow pit,
Right.
looking up at how impossibly high and slick the walls are.
And from the bottom, the only data you have is the dirt in front of your face. It just looks like you're never getting out. It reinforces that learned helplessness.
Exactly. But the miracle question teleports you. Now, you're standing at the top of the pit, out in the sunlight, looking back down at the path you took to climb out.
Oh, wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are temporarily putting aside the ingrained belief that it's impossible. You are granting yourself permission to immerse yourself in a hypothetical world where success is already a given.
Because the miracle already happened.
Right. And when you do that, when you remove the biological pressure of how do I survive this, completely new practical options reveal themselves. The map was always there. You just couldn't read it in the dark.
Because you aren't focused on the fear of failure anymore. The miracle already handled the success part. All you have to do is trace the steps.
Right. And it is crucial to emphasize that this is not just positive thinking.
Right. We mentioned toxic positivity earlier.
It is not some toxic positivity mantra where you just look in the mirror and pretend everything is fine. Positive thinking often denies reality.
At least this doesn't.
No. Reframing acknowledges the reality of the pit, but changes your vantage point. It is a highly practical technology for assembling action.
A technology for assembling action.
Yes. You are tricking your brain into dropping its defenses just long enough to show you the map it was hiding.
A practical technology for assembling action. I absolutely love that phrasing.
Oh.
So let's look at the full picture here. We've bypassed the echo chamber of our well-meaning but frightened friends.
Sure.
We've bypassed our own learned helplessness by turning off the amygdala.
Check.
We have our answer from the miracle question, but let's bring it back to the very beginning. Why, fundamentally, is this internal answer inherently better than the advice we were seeking from our friends at the start of this deep dive? Like, Why is my miracle answer better than my best friend's logical advice?
It comes down to the concept of idiosyncratic blueprints.
Okay.
External advice, no matter how wise, no matter how well-intentioned, is always forced through the filter of someone else's life.
Right, their baggage.
It is based on their risk tolerance, their past traumas, their socioeconomic background, and their specific skill sets.
Okay, that makes sense.
Think about it this way. If a marathon runner gives you advice on how to get in shape, it might be objectively good advice.
Run 10 miles a day.
Right. But if you have bad knees, it is completely useless to you.
Worse than useless, it's damaging.
Exactly. The answer generated by your own miracle question, on the other hand, is tailored perfectly to your specific way of living.
It's bespoke to me. It takes my bad knees into account automatically because it was generated by my own brain.
Exactly. Because you synthesized it from your own experiences, your own emotions, and your own unconscious, it is vastly easier to actually execute.
Because it fits.
It fits you perfectly. An answer you generate from within is always going to be more authentic and therefore more actionable than an answer you borrow from someone else's filter.
And this brings up a really powerful realization for me.
What's that?
If we are going to start relying on our own internal blueprint, we have to actively change our behavior regarding other people.
Yes, we do.
We have to stop seeking out opposing opinions just to give ourselves an excuse not to try. We have to stop looking for people to tell us no.
It is a profound shift in behavior and, frankly, a painful one.
I can imagine.
We talked earlier about the relief of getting someone to say, don't do it. The secondary gain of failure or inaction is comfort. It absolves you of the responsibility.
About the insurance policy.
But you have to deeply consider the trade-off you are making. Yes, you get temporary relief. You don't have to face the fear today. But in exchange, you trade away the entire opportunity to test your own potential. You trade away your agency. You basically become a passenger in your own life.
So what does this all mean for us going forward? How do we build a new paradigm out of this? Because if I stop asking for advice and I start relying on the miracle question, I'm stripping away all my insurance policies.
You are.
I'm going to be the one completely on the hook if things go wrong.
That is the core of it. The goal is to consciously shift your time and your energy away from collecting opposition and redirect it toward trusting yourself.
Which is easier said than done.
It is the hardest work you will do. You have to reach a point of maturity where you make a choice and you fully accept that if it fails, you will not point a finger at anyone else.
Wow.
The failure is yours, but so is the attempt.
That sounds terrifying, to be honest. Stripping away the scapegoats leaves you incredibly vulnerable.
It is terrifying, and you shouldn't expect it not to be. You have to learn to choose a step forward while still holding on to the fear.
So the fear doesn't go away.
No, you do not wait for the fear to disappear. If you wait for the fear to disappear, you will wait until you die.
Wow.
You step forward with it. And what happens is, by repeatedly asking the miracle question across different problems over time, you don't just solve those individual logistical issues, you actually engage in neuroplasticity.
Wait, really?
Yes, you rewrite your cognitive habits.
You physically rewire the brain away from learned helplessness.
Yes. You eventually free yourself from that default setting of despair. You train your brain to immediately look for the reverse-engineered action rather than fixating on the dead end.
That is incredible.
And over time, this is what actually alleviates the overall hardness of living. Life becomes less heavy not because the problems disappear, but because you inherently trust your own capacity to navigate them.
Wow. Okay, let's recap this massive journey we've been on.
It's been quite the ride.
We started by learning that when we obsessively seek advice, we are often just searching for failure insurance, so we don't have to take the blame, leaning on the evolutionary risk aversion of our tribe.
Right.
We explored how feeling completely stuck isn't a physical fact, but rather a habit of the mind-learned helplessness, masking our fear of trying.
Exactly.
And we discovered that by using the miracle question, we can bypass the brain's threat detection system, teleport to a future where the problem is solved, and reverse engineer our immediate next steps based on action, not emotion.
Which is so critical.
Right. And by doing this, we tap into bespoke answers that are perfectly tailored to our own lives, rather than borrowed from someone else's fears.
It is a complete inversion of how most of us are taught to handle crises. We move from seeking external validation to generating internal agency.
It really is a complete rewiring. And as we wrap up, there is this final lingering idea that builds on what we discussed today.
Okay.
We just talked about making a choice while holding on to fear, rather than waiting to eliminate the fear first. And that implies something truly profound to me.
What's that?
We spend so much of our lives treating anxiety and fear like a wall blocking our path. We think we have to knock the wall down before we can walk. But what if fear was never actually a wall? What if it was simply a passenger that you were required to bring along for the ride?
That fundamentally changes your relationship with your own nervous system.
Right.
Our brains frequently misinterpret modern psychological stress like sending a risky email or changing careers as a literal saber-toothed tiger.
Right, the threat system.
But what happens to that anxiety when you stop trying to cure it? What happens when you stop fighting it or trying to get your friends to validate how scary the tiger is?
Exactly.
What if you just acknowledge the fear, ask it to sit quietly in the passenger seat, and put the car in drive toward the actions your miracle future demands?
Exactly. The fear can come along for the ride, but it doesn't get to touch the steering wheel. You're the one driving.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before you ask anyone else for their opinion, try asking yourself the miracle question. Sit with the silence for 10 seconds, and for once, trust the answer that comes from within. We'll catch you next time.